Many countries welcomed the UN Security Council resolution expanding arms embargo on Houthis. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Lenderking says Washington is committed to supporting Yemen to end the conflict. In violation of international law, Houthi militia continues to target civilians in Taiz Governorate. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fouad. The Arab League welcomed the UN Security Council resolution imposing an arms embargo on the Houthi rebels. The Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Ahmed Abul Ghait, said this resolution comes in line with international efforts to address terrorism and will contribute to limiting the Houthis' military abilities and easing civilian suffering. More on this is in the following report.
United Nations Security Council adoption of a resolution renewing sanctions on the Houthi militia and labeling them as a terrorist group for the first time will go a long way to limit the capacity of escalating the war in Yemen. The United Nations resolution condemned Houthi terrorist groups' cross-border attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure in the UAE and Saudi Arabia and demanded the group's immediate cessation of hostilities. The Council agreed to expand a targeted United Nations arms embargo on several Houthi leaders to the whole group, a move which was pushed by the UAE after the Houthis claimed several drones and missile attacks on the UAE and Saudi Arabia this year. During the recent month, Houthis have waged an unprecedented string of largely failed missile attacks on targets in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. 3 people were killed in one such attack in Abu Dhabi, prompting targeted coalition airstrikes against the group. Before it started the barrage of ballistic cruise missiles and weaponized drones against civilian sites across the UAE, the terrorist group seized an Emirati flagged ship off the shores in Yemen. It has been clear for some time now that Houthis were alarmed by a string of defeats on the battleground. They have restored to a new phase of violence. Therefore, labeling Houthis as a terror group by the United Nations should serve as a reminder to other powers, mainly the United States of America, to return the extremist group to the list of foreign terrorist organizations. This will not only help disrupt illicit financial and weapon networks feeding the horror terror machine, but also add pressure on the group and put an end to hostilities in the protracted Yemen war. On their part, Houthis must take note of the latest political developments and cease their terrorist acts and coastal attacks. The group must return to the negotiating table to begin a serious political process.
The United States pledged to continue coordination in the Security Council to maintain the international consensus to support Yemen. This came during a meeting in Riyadh between the U.S. envoy Tim Lenderking with President Abdurrabbu Mansour. The Yemeni president urged Washington to do more efforts during the upcoming donors conference to secure funds required for a humanitarian response for the current year. The U.S. government has sanctioned more than a dozen companies and people it claims are involved in financing the Houthi rebels in Yemen. The U.S. Treasury says a network led by Iran's Revolutionary Guards has transferred tens of millions of dollars to Yemen via a complex international network of intermediaries in support of the Houthis' attacks. The network has generated tens of millions of dollars in revenue with the aid of a diverse array of international commodity traders. A parliamentary committee visited Ma'rib and met with top officials in the Ministry of Defense. The meeting, attended by Minister of Defense Muhammad Ali al-Maqdashi and Chief of Staff Saghir Abdin Aziz, touched on all issues and challenges facing government forces. The meeting also discussed ways to complete the liberation of the rest of the regions from the Houthi militia.
We've come today to visit our heroes in Ma'rib who are offering the greatest sacrifices. We, as visit them today, to send a message from Yemeni House of Representatives that supports the fighters in the field and to check their requirements. In addition, we will inspect security and humanitarian aspects needed in the Governorate of Ma'rib through discussing these issues with the concerned and executive bodies. The most important issue, however, is to check the situations of our fighters. We call on all parties such as tribesmen and parliamentarians to support the armed forces and the tribesmen who fight back the Houthi militia.
During the meeting, the Minister of Defense welcomed the visit made by the parliamentary team and expressed his readiness to cooperate with the House of the Representatives in discussing any issues related to the armed forces.
We've been working on organizing and reframing the armed forces recently. We welcome any move from the Parliament to visit or inspect positions of the army and to discuss any issue with the parliamentary team.
For his part, Chief of Staff said the army is doing its best to confront the Houthi militia advance in different areas, despite insufficient military capabilities.
الجيش بالنسبة لنا في وزارة الدفاع 7 مناطق.
The Yemeni army is located in 7 positions within Yemen. It's located in all the governorates of the Republic. The armed forces are assuming their responsibilities according to the law and the constitution. Perhaps there is a gap in meeting these responsibilities considering some obstacles and sanctions. However, we really consider that we are doing our best.
Government forces destroyed sites and fortifications established by the Houthi militia in Abiyan, southern Yemen. Sources said the Houthi militia had directed a number of crews and elements to create new sites, but the government forces repelled the attempt and dealt painful blows to the militants, causing losses among them and forcing the rest to flee. The government forces engaged in fierce battles with the Houthi rebels in Hajjah, northwest of Yemen. According to military sources, the battles erupted after Houthi rebels tried to advance in some positions. A girl was killed by Houthi sniper firing in Taiz Governorate. Local sources outlined that the girl was killed after she was targeted by a sniper of the Houthi militia while collecting firewood next to her house west of Taiz. More on the violations of the Houthis in Taiz is in the following report.
A Yemeni Human Rights Center said that the continued bombing of civilians by the Houthi militia in the city of Taiz, southwest of Yemen, is a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law, treaties and covenants that criminalize targeting of civilians. In a statement, the Taiz Human Rights Center held the international community and the United Nations envoy to Yemen the direct moral and legal responsibility toward the victims of the Houthi repeated bombings of civilians in Taiz and other governorates, stressing that silence about Houthi crimes and not taking a deterrent stance against targeted population centers encourages more crimes and violations. The Houthi militia's targeting of Sha'b Silman neighborhood in Wadi Qadi area in the center of Taiz was documented, with a missile fired from its position on a Sittin Strait, north of the city. This resulted in the destruction of a house and a partial damage to neighboring houses. The team also documented the fall of an artillery shell fired by the Houthi militia on a house in a Safwa hospital neighborhood in the center of the city of Taiz. This caused severe damage to the house and private properties. It also caused panic and terror among civilians, especially children and women. The team also documented the serious injury of a mother and her 2 children, one of whom had his hand amputated and the other was injured by a sharpener in the head as a result of artillery shelling launched by the Houthi militia earlier on the village of Al Abdallah in Makhbana district, west of Taiz Governorate.
Houthi mines pose a real threat to civilians, especially those who are in the newly liberated areas. Hundreds have been killed or maimed because of those mines, despite local and international calls on Houthis to hand over maps of such fatal mines. The rebels are not responding. The following report has more details.
The Yemeni war is raging and its many fronts are burning. People are dying on a daily basis. There's another hidden war that is being waged against innocent people who have no fault but that they live on the same land and roam close to the battlefields. The landmines planted by the Houthis continue to claim lives of innocent civilians. Saeed Abdullah is a citizen who lost his father while chasing livestock after a mine exploded in him and he died instantly. There is no map of the mines and affected areas in Yemen, and there is no accurate count of the victims and injured, but most of the areas reached by the Houthis, whether in southern or central Yemen, have become minefields, especially the divided province of Taiz between the conflicting fronts, and other parties and terrorist groups are also responsible. Rights Radar Organization for Human Rights in the Arab world confirmed that the armed conflict that Yemen had witnessed since 2014 has led to the killing of 685 civilians, and some soldiers were also killed due to mines. Moreover, Taiz Governorate topped the list of victims with 160 deaths, followed by Hodeidah with 114 deaths, and then Al-Baida with 94 deaths. Rights Radar called on the Houthi armed group to hand over maps of all the fields and areas it mined in Yemen over the past years to the Yemeni government and to the bodies and programs working in the field of demining in Yemen. It called on the Houthis to stop planting mines of all shapes and sizes and to stop making explosive devices. The organization called on the parties to the conflict in Yemen to respect international commitments regarding banning mines and not to use them in all circumstances, and to abide by all relevant commitments signed by Yemen.
Coalition warplanes targeted Houthi militia supply centers and gatherings north of Hajjah. Field military sources stated that the coalition fighters launched 5 air raids targeting Houthi militia supply centers, a vehicle carrying ammunition, and militia gatherings. The coalition airstrikes resulted in the killing and wounding of dozens of Houthi fighters and the destruction of supply centers and military patrols. Coming next. March 2nd is the national day celebrated to revive the famous Yemeni coffee.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف، والكيس الدقيق ب18 ألف، والكيس السكر اليوم ب20 ألف. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل كيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالتي الحين حالة لما خرج المندوب احنا شبكينا ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل ما احنا بحاجة صعبة.
Welcome back. The terrorist Houthi militia prevented a commercial group from providing annual food aid to hundreds of poor families. Local sources reported that armed groups affiliated with the Houthi militia stopped distributing food aid provided to poor families in the city of Rada in Al-Baida Governorate, central Yemen. An oil derivatives crisis has hit the country, especially areas under the control of the Houthi militia. The crisis comes amid Houthi militia prevention of trucks entry from Ma'rib and Aden. Informed sources reveal that the Houthi leaders are earning billions of riyals per month from the differential prices of fuel and household gas. The following report has more details.
Oil derivatives have reached historic highs in regions controlled by the Houthi militia, with the price of a gallon of gasoline exceeding 39,000 Yemeni riyals on the Houthi-run black market. Citizens and residents in Sana'a have confirmed that gasoline prices have risen to unprecedented levels, noting that the price of a can of gasoline has reached 39,000 riyals, the highest increase since the Houthi coup ignited the war. For the second month in a row, Sana'a and the Houthi-controlled governorates have witnessed a suffocating crisis in gasoline, diesel, and household gas, as well as an increase in transportation prices, electricity bills, and food prices, where residents and station owners accuse the militia of fabricating crises of gas derivatives to further burden citizens and to achieve financial profits. This crisis was accompanied by a significant resurgence in the illicit market, where fuel prices have reached an all-time high and are controlled by Houthi officials. Yemen's government has accused the Houthi militia of fabricating the oil derivatives crisis. Despite the suffocating crisis that the capital Sana'a is experiencing, the Houthi militia is blocking hundreds of fuel tankers arriving from Ma'rib and Hadramaut. According to local sources, the Houthis refused to let more than 600 tankers loaded with gasoline to traverse the city of Hazm towards Sana'a, exacerbating the fuel crisis in the militia-controlled governorates in exchange for a considerable recovery of the black market linked with Houthi officials. The Houthi militia obtains oil subsidies from Iran and sells them to civilians at 3 times the global market price with an enforced periodic price increase. The international team of experts on Yemen recently highlighted in its reports to the UN Security Council that the Houthis are fabricating an oil crisis in order to induce merchants to sell fuel on the black market they administer. According to the report, the volume of fuel deliveries by land to Houthi-controlled areas in April and May 2021 amounted to approximately 10,000 barrels per day, accounting for approximately 65% of the petroleum imported into Yemen, compared to supplies of 6,000 tons per day prior to this date. The report indicates that Houthis are creating an artificial shortage of gasoline in order to drive traders to sell it on their black market and collect unlawful fines imposed on sales.
Yemen's high-quality coffee dates back to the dawn of civilization. It used to be exported through Makha port as an attempt to revive and encourage locals to grow coffee instead of khat. A national day was announced to coffee, which is the 2nd of March. The following report has more details.
Yemenis are preparing to celebrate the National Day to revive the cultivation of coffee, which falls on the 3rd of March of each year. Yemeni coffee still retains an important position because of its high quality, as it grows in mountainous terrain that gives it a distinctive taste, but interest in its production has recently reduced due to several factors, most notably the war that the country has been going on for about 7 years. Encouraging the cultivation of Yemeni coffee comes from the idea that it was famous for the symbolism of the coffee tree, which was called Mocha coffee, and its name was associated with the port of Makha, through which it was exported to the world, as well as its connection to the history of Yemen, and recorded a wide presence in the world. Yemeni coffee is considered one of the most delicious drinks in the world, and Yemen has been famous for its cultivation in its high mountains and hills since ancient times. From this point, Yemeni youth initiatives continue to plant about 355,000 coffee seedlings in Sana'a with the aim of returning Yemen to export, which has declined in recent years. Despite the absence of the authorities, youth initiatives are trying to restore consideration to the Yemeni coffee tree and return it to its prestigious position. The cultivation of coffee in Yemen is of great importance throughout history. Coffee production is one of the most important areas of the local product and one of the tributaries of the national economy.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Many countries welcome the UN Security Council resolution expanding arms embargo on Houthis. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Lender King says Washington is committed to supporting Yemen to end the conflict. In violation of international law, Houthi militia continues to target civilians in Taiz Governorate. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. This is Rushain Fouad. Thank you for watching.